Hello, everybody, and welcome. It's another episode of Let's Talk Broncos. Zach, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Awkward couple seconds there off the start when we thought StreamYard was glitching out, but
Yeah,
we're here. We're ready for some Broncos content. We finally got football to talk about. How exciting is that? I cannot wait
I
to
feel like
actually have real football to talk about and not like practice football.
I feel like the audience got a sneak peek of how awkward it is every single time we try to end or start this stream. That's what it's like. We just sit there in silence until the damn thing starts. And then Zach's already muted. It's a beautiful thing.
I've been on like a 4 episode streak of not doing that. But yeah, we're completely at the thing's whim. It sometimes it's immediate, sometimes it takes 4 seconds. Who knows? Okay, we got Bo Nix in the chat. Hell yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we do have a fun episode ahead. I mean, we got some takeaways. I think we haven't recorded since the last time the Broncos played in the preseason. And I think now that it's resonated with us, we have some different thoughts there. We're going to also go over some news, Zach, some injuries that are going on. The Broncos did make some moves as well and adding some players people may not know about. Just different stuff like that. So I hope all of you guys stay tuned. We do have a fun episode ahead. And Zach, let's jump straight into the news. The Broncos have added Alec Mock to the team for what seems like the 6th time this offseason. Linebacker from Air Force. Man, why do they keep cutting him and adding him back? At this point, it's disrespectful.
Yeah, it is a little. I think this is just a guy that they like, enough to want to have him in practice. Maybe he's a good practice player and, they can execute whatever special teams drills they're trying to execute with him well. He's not going to be a problem in practice that is blowing up a rep. Because that's one thing. If you have a really bad tackle, for example, like I sent Joey some clips of Trevor Penning in the Cardinals preseason game. And preseason's kind of like a practice. But like if you have a guy that's that bad, it's giving your quarterback bad reps because like he's having to deal with a non-existent right tackle, which isn't allowing him to properly practice the things he needs to practice and whatnot. So I don't think it'll be like that, but yeah, I know.
Yeah. So they added him back. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how nicely you can say, or I guess this is the most disrespectful way you can possibly say you're not making the final 53.
Yeah, for real. Because
he's the last man.
Like the 90th man. Yeah, exactly. He is the 90th. They like him enough for that. But here's the real kicker, Joey. That also means you're not on the practice squad because you got 53 plus 10 for the practice squad. Or maybe they've expanded it a little, but still, you're not getting to 90. I don't know where this guy's going. I guess you're giving him a chance to get some like practice film out there for maybe the UFL, or I guess for maybe different NFL team, but it's it seems like a hard deal for Alec Mock. That said, this inside linebacker room is so wide open that if you are going to if any 90th man was going to somehow worm their way onto the roster, it would be probably an inside linebacker.
Yeah. Well, I do have to say they also added Caleb Hayes. Caleb Hayes is from BYU, and I just thought I'd bring this RAS score up here just so people can look at just how athletic this guy is. He's bounced around the league, Zach, since 2021, I believe it was when he was – no, it's 2023. Okay, he's bounced around the league a little bit, though. I know he's been on at least 2 other teams. And he is a freak show. I just wanted to highlight this just so everyone sees. 4.33, 40-yard dash. He has a 40-inch vertical. He has crazy arm length, especially for a 5'11 corner. This is the type of guy I want as my gunner, if I'm being honest with you. That's what I saw right when I saw those stats. I'm like, can this guy carve his way into at least a special teams role? Special teams being so just who's athletic, who can tackle, who's physical. Like that's the type of role there. And I just haven't seen anyone talk about him. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. Do you have any additional thoughts on Caleb Hayes?
No, I don't. I mean, he's a good athlete, exciting guy. You hit it all. I think he probably doesn't make the roster. This is another guy in the 90-man situation. But who knows? I wouldn't be surprised if like they cut Damari Mathis, if they give up on that experiment. Maybe a guy like Caleb Hayes can find his way onto the roster.
Yeah, and I guess like Tremont Smith, right, is already taking a cornerback slot for purely special teams reasons. Do you think you can even validate having two corners, two guys playing the exact same position, make it just for special teams?
No, I think especially when you don't have that faith in Riley Moss, and I don't think you can at this point. The only live football reps we will have seen of him is preseason, and that goes for the coaching staff as well. You need to have some insurance plan. It can't just be people that you trust on special teams. Like Draymond Smith got burned a bit in that preseason game. He's a great special teamer, but he really is a special teamer. I think he'll get some returning reps and they'll get a little more value out of him there. But yeah, this team is like, they've got so many depth concerns at so many positions. They don't have the luxury of like gobbling up a ton of roster spots with pure special teamers.
Right. Right. No, I think you're right, especially just because they play the same position. Like that's the main thing. If he was like an extra tight end in the room that was an amazing special teams player, I think there would probably be more of a shot. It's just hard because Tremont Smith is already taking one of those spots, but they did claim him. I mean, I think it was the Giants that cut him and they claimed him. So they clearly like the guy a little bit. It'll be interesting to see how he does. And stuff like that. And I want to move, if someone's commenting about it in here right now, felt like he only got signed because Art Green won't play this week with the concussion injury. Yeah, I do think that's probably right as well. And that brings us right into our next point, which is the injuries. Man, did that Samaje Perine interception do worse than you would have hoped? Also hurting Ben Powers' ribs on that play. Running straight into him. That wasn't ideal. And then, or I think that was two different plays actually, but Samaje Perine.
No, the same one.
Was it? Okay, yep. That was just the worst play of all time. Lucas Kroll has a little bit of a toe injury. If I remember correctly, I don't think that's a huge issue. And then Art Green, as mentioned, has the concussion. I was shocked to not see Greg Dulcich on this after he took that seam where Bo Nix threw that seam up the sideline. It looked like his forearm or something like that was banged up to me. It's very encouraging not seeing him on this list. I'm very, very used to Greg Dulcich being on this list. Do you have any injury takeaways, Zach?
I think the Dulcich point is a good one. And it does feel like, admittedly, it does feel a little patronizing to like, we've already done it through like, hey, 2 weeks of camp and Dulcich is still okay. Now we're one preseason game in and we're celebrating that Dulcich is still okay. But I think it's also fair. Last year he couldn't get through a single week. He made a couple returns and both times he was gone within the week or within a couple minutes. And so him having this, sustained string of health makes me a little more optimistic that, maybe it's not 4 games of Greg Dulcich this year. Maybe it's 9, maybe it's 10. And the longer this goes, the more optimistic I'll be. And I don't have many questions about like Greg Dulcich, the receiver. He could grow definitely as like a blocker and a player in some ways, but he's a really talented pass catcher. I think one of the better pass catchers on this team. They could definitely use him as many games as he can be healthy for. They could use him for all.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Zach, because, there was a really good thread, and I wish I could shout the guy out right now. I just don't have his ad up. He made a thread of, I've watched every tight end this last season, and here's my ranking of tight ends. And he was very big on the point where, hey, if you're not good at blocking, you're going to be lower on my list because I might as well just have a receiver out there, right? So if you're not crossing that like 1,000-yard territory, why would I have you out there that's not a receiver? The unique part about this Broncos team is that I do think Greg Dulcich is a better receiver than some of the receivers. I think I would rather have him out there for the majority of times. I just need a really good pass catcher out there. And him being healthy this year would be massive. I am personally, I wouldn't bet on it. Just knowing how it's worked this last few years. Zach, I remember you coming here on this podcast after the hamstring, and didn't he have to learn how to run again or something like that? Like
they examined changing his gait, as they were thinking his gait might have been a factor in what was causing that.
Yeah, see, that's like just not a great sign. It's awesome to hear he's still here. We go right here. Yeah, go shout him out. He was fantastic. And if you guys are watching on YouTube, you can see right here. You go check out that thread for sure. It was an awesome thread.
Max Toscano for audio listeners.
Yes,
Toscano.
Go check him out. He was fantastic with that thread. He had Greg Kittle as his number one over Travis Kelce for that specific reason, because not only does he affect the receiving game, he really is like a extra offensive lineman in there as a blocker. If anyone went and saw Mike McGlinchey when we signed him, that was very, very, very apparent, was that he was a really, really good blocker. The reason why I think he got paid so much, you could credit a lot of that to George Kittle there. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, really quick. I just wanted to add on to your point about the blocking, because it's true, just not in regard to Greg Dulcich, but the Broncos in general. If they want to be this smash mouth team, I think it's fair to wonder, how much can they do the 12 personnel stuff? Something we're seeing in the NFL game right now, one of the metas is you want to get defenses and base personnel because it's easier to predict and read out pre-snap. I think it's easier to create mismatches in the passing game. And so you're seeing teams kind of try and lean into that. That's like what frankly, what the Chiefs are doing with their array of tight ends, what the Bills were doing by drafting Dalton Kincaid. Going into these 12 personnel looks to try and get base defense more. Well, defenses aren't going into base to defend 12 anymore. They're going into nickel. They're keeping their good athletes on the field. They're keeping their creative packages, and they're basically daring your second tight end, who, a lot of the tight ends coming out are like Greg Dulcich, good receivers, not the best blockers. As that has proliferated around the NFL, a lot of teams have their number two tight ends is guys that are, one of the two. And so these teams are willing to go, hey, we're going to put our nickel defense out there, and we're going to dare you to see if you really can use 12 personnel the way it's meant to be used and run it down our throats. I think the Broncos might be able to do that with the investments they've made on the line. Dulcich taking a big leap as a blocker, or even somewhat of a leap as a blocker, would help them there.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And it kind of takes me into our final thoughts on the last preseason game where, man, if the Broncos had a really imposing center, and I don't think Sam Wattenberg was bad by any means. I don't want to throw that out there. I thought he looked serviceable for the most part. I thought he had some lapses, just mental lapses. I think that comes through reps and stuff like that. He overall held power really good in pass pro. He did some good things, but I didn't see him being very imposing. And to your point, Zach, that's the one part of this offensive line to me where I was watching Graham Barton for the Bucs, right? The clips that those were posted online. They had a really imposing center. I think the Broncos could have one of the most efficient run teams in the league this year. I really do. I question it a little bit now, though, because I don't know what I'm going to get from Javonte Williams as far as his vision goes. And I don't really know what I'm going to get with Sam Wattenberg just as far as moving people around.
Yeah, fully agree. I guess my pushback on that would be this is offense. Even if you look at season long, and it tailed down the stretch last year. I think we saw Javonte's legs kind of give out on him down the stretch coming off that injury. And defenses just became so disrespectful of the Broncos passing game that they were just loading up that box. It became very hard to run down the stretch. In spite of all that, they are season long, no garbage time filters or anything. They're 9th in rushing success rate. I think it's only going to be better this year as that running back room. I think it takes an upgrade in talent. They're not going to be cutting Samaje Perine for no reason. McLaughlin's going to take a step forward, I believe. And I also think Javonte is going to be a year healthier, and that'll make a notable difference. And then I also think the center position is probably going to take a step back from last year, but I think it just might mesh better. Like there was a lot of funkiness. As good as Cushenberry was, there was a lot of funkiness in the run game. When they were asking him to do power stuff, or they were having to ask the other guys to do zone stuff to accommodate Cushenberry. So I guess I agree, but I think the change at quarterback and the overall upgrade in running back talent is going to be enough to offset it, especially considering how high the floor seemed to be last year.
So do you think it's going to be better than it was last year? That's where I
yeah.
start. You do. See, I just don't know. I think a lot of that same point of where Cushenberry, just from what I saw last week, I haven't studied Wattenberg a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
But from what I saw last week, I didn't think he was any more imposing than Cushenberry was as a center. So I think that same point of what you made where everything meshes a little better, I don't really know if that gets fixed. I don't know. I think you do have really good run blockers across your offensive line. Like, I think Ben Powers is a really good run blocker. I think Quinn Miners is one of the best run blockers in the NFL. I think Mike McGlinchey is one of the best run blocking tackles in the NFL, especially when you're asking him to move and do zone blocking and stuff like that. Garrett Bowles is a solid run blocker too. It's just, is he going to be better than Lloyd? I don't think so. Am I going to get any better out of my tight ends? I don't really think so. And hopefully I can get better out of my running backs. I just don't know if that's necessarily the truth.
I guess I think that's fair. I don't know how it's going to be any worse. I think you're taking the step back with Cushenberry. I'll give you the O-line talent point. I just think, again, the change at quarterback is going to be so massive for this run game because teams aren't going to be allowed to load the box like crazy against it and just dare an inept passing game to throw at them. I think that's going to be the biggest change. I also think this offensive line, now both sides of my mouth here, this offensive line played a lot together last year. And I think the plus of that is something we hear a lot about offensive lines is how important chemistry is to that position and knowing how to like work together. And all these guys know how to work together. So I think that's definitely a benefit. That said, they're probably going to have some injury regression this year. But I think, I can't imagine it being much worse than ninth. Because again, that whole final month of the season, it was such an inefficient run game that really brought it down. I do think the little glimpses we've seen of Javonte have me at least optimistic that we're getting a better version of him. I don't think you're missing out too much by losing Samaji. I'll give you that we don't know what Estimate is, but I don't think you're losing too much there. And I think McLaughlin, man, I'm buying all the McLaughlin stock. I understand he has to be like a certain role player, but I think he's going to thrive in that role this year. I think, I would bet right now, if you want to throw a little like bold prediction wager on it, I would bet right now that they're a top 8 run game in terms of success rate.
I'll take you up on that. I don't see why not. I'll take you up on that. I do think you get a little bit, because I think Bo Nix is going to be running more than Russell Wilson did this last year, just out of the fact that I think it's going to help him to use his legs as a rookie. We saw a little bit about that in the preseason, so you might be right there. I'll take you up on it for the sake of the podcast, though. I do. I think it could go 50-50 there. And let's move in, Zach, to the topic of the show, though. Why Marvin Mims needs to make a splash this week. I noted this on Twitter. Where is the Marvin Mims? Man, Marvin Mims had a great training camp today. Marvin Mims is awesome today. Where is all of that talk? I haven't heard it at all this entire offseason. You've been there more than me. I don't think you've seen Marvin Mims just have a monster day at training camp. And then fast forward to preseason starting. This guy is cracking back on a defensive end on a pitch in the late third quarter of a preseason game. Well, what's going on there? It's a little concerning to me. I think the offense needs this explosiveness on the field, and if Marvin Mims isn't that guy right now, where are the Broncos getting this yak? Where are they getting the downfield, the stretching downfield ability? Where is this all coming from?
Yeah, I highlighted it in my article. The first 12 snaps of the game this past week, it was like Sutton was out there for all 12. Tim Patrick was out there for 11 or 12. Reynolds was out there for 7, and Mims was out there for like 1. As of right now, I think it is like those are your three. It is Sutton, Patrick, and Reynolds, and then Mims is still relegated to like that bit player piece off the bench. Though last year, I think he was probably the number 3 guy, not the number 4. So he's almost maybe been demoted from where he was a season ago, and that's disappointing. We've seen the flashes with Mims. He very clearly is talented and can be really good as a deep threat player. As you said, he's already established that he can thrive within that niche. Can he be more than that? Can he be like a down-to-down Z, a building block for this offense going forward? And what he needs to show for that to be attainable is a lot better route running and just refining, I don't know, the technical elements of his game. The fact that you have him running with like the kind of second team, almost into the third team late into the game there. Yeah, I don't know. And not at all with the starters tells me that he is still in the eyes of the coaching staff, not an every down receiver. He is still that bit player, that a deep ball only guy. And man, that's disappointing. I was hoping for a big leap out of Marvin Mims this year. I know you were. And right now it feels ominous. Right now it feels like maybe a plateau or at least not the step we were hoping for.
I think it's just important, even if he is that bit player, that quote unquote bit player that you're talking about, Zach, I still struggle to see why he's not on the field. You still need that bit, and none of those other guys are offering that. So like what you still need it. That's what I'm struggling with this whole idea. Tim Patrick's coming off the injury. He hasn't played in 5 ever. And he's seeing time over him. Is he even the same athlete? I thought Tim Patrick was really good at stretching the field. Very underrated at it, honestly, when he was healthy. We haven't seen him in a bit. I don't know if he can do that. Cortland Sutton is more of I'm coming down with a contested catch guy. And Josh Reynolds isn't stretching the field. Like, I think it's important you at least have that on the field. I just don't understand it.
I think that's all he is, and that's what he's going to be. And I agree, it is a little compact. This receiving room needs a lot more. I won't be surprised if it's their first round pick next year for that reason, or if the Cowboys can't get something done with CD, the Broncos are in that sweepstakes or something. Like this room absolutely needs juice. I agree with you there. I just think if all he is a deep threat, which I kind of think might be the case at this point, was the case last year. I think their actions suggest it still might be the case. I know I've cited the stat a million times on here. I'll cite it again. His win rates against man coverage and zone coverage were most comparable to like Jalen Reagor last year. You have to be able to get open. Like having that vertical element to stretch the defense vertically is definitely important. That's helpful for the offense. But man, if you are separating as well as Jalen Reagor, that's also, we can't really have you out on the field there. Like if you're just go routes, I mean, you are going to be a not a starting receiver, or I guess a 11 personnel receiver every down. You're going to be a rotational player who has a niche role. And unfortunately, I mean, that's what he was last year. Unfortunately, it looks to me like the Broncos are planning on using him the same way. And I'll say really quick, Sean Payton did his whole thing last year, every week, where it was like, oh, we got to get this guy more involved. You earn your snaps, you earn your targets in this league. These coaches aren't blind to like who they're playing on Sundays. They're doing it with a reason. He's just not going to throw him under the bus publicly to the media, but like, don't fall for that this year. Too many people fell for that last year.
Okay. So I ultimately agree with you, but I come to a little bit of a different conclusion, Zach, because still, if I want someone to run straight down the field, I'm picking Marvin Mims. If I want someone to run a deep crosser clear out, I want Marvin Mims. If I want someone to run a drag across the field, I want Marvin Mims. If I want to run a screen, I want Marvin Mims. All of those I want over everybody else on the Broncos, just because he's faster, more athletic, he can make more happen after the catch. I don't understand it. I think it's a lot of what you're saying, and I also think a lot of I just have an infatuation over these really tall wide receivers that can block really, really, really good. I think it's kind of a mix of multiple deals here. I don't know. It's concerning nonetheless. And We have a question here from Roport. It says, is Mims' lack of production a developmental issue or scheme related? I think it is a developmental issue, to Zach's point. Listen, the college game at this position doesn't really prepare you for the pros very well. It really doesn't. It just doesn't, especially from where Marvin Mims came from at Oklahoma, very limited route tree. He won doing screens, punt returns, and deep routes. That's how he won, and that's all he was really asked to do. And now that you're coming into the NFL, it's a completely different game, and he's just one of the many guys that are struggling to adjust. Zach, what do you have there?
Yeah, I think you hit it dead on. This was a guy that needed to add those technical elements of his game. You saw some things that were really exciting in Oklahoma, specifically winning on the deep ball, making some of those contested catches despite his size. Some, exciting ability after the catch and whatnot. But yeah, he definitely wasn't a refined route runner, and I don't think he's that still in the NFL. It's going to be a development issue. I don't think it's really scheme related. I don't think there's many schemes in the NFL where his role would be much different than what it is in Denver. For him to expand beyond what we saw last year, and he might become a better version of what we saw last year, but for him to become an every down receiver, he needs to add elements to his game. Specifically the ability to separate consistently without it just being go route.
Or find a stop spot or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I ultimately agree. And yeah, there was a question in here. It was from D Bronx. He says, how much correlation is there with this offense struggling to integrate it? I can't read. Integrate Mims and having quarterbacks whose scattering reports say they're hesitant to go downfield. Do you think there's anything with that, Zach?
I don't think so, right? Because last year it was the exact same thing, and you had Russell Wilson, who was only deep shots and dump offs to P. Ryan. That's all he was. And it was the exact same problem. If it was we were seeing his role greatly diminished, I could maybe give some credence to that, but it's more of a plateau. And again, Russell Wilson's entire game at this point in his career is well, at least he throws a pretty deep ball. And I don't think it's that. I really think it's the last time we saw him, he had a massive hole in his game that was preventing him from getting onto the field. And now he's still struggling to get onto the field. My assumption is that hole in his game still exists.
Yeah, we will see. I have a hard time believing he's that far down the depth chart. I think that there is going to be more of a rotation than last game indicated. I do think that, just because you're going to need that skill set. You're going to need it. There's no way around it. You're going to need that skill set. So,
and to that point, really quick, I know you want to move us on, but to that point, it was Tim Patrick's first game in 2 years. I don't think it's that hard to imagine a head coach being like, hey man, let's get you some extra snaps. I know you're fired up for this. I know you've been waiting for this for a long time. Let's have you be involved. Let's have you be one of our main guys. That's an easy bone to throw a guy who, from what little we all know about Tim Patrick, I bet he was champing at the bit for that. Yeah. So throw the guy a bone, and I also think, again, it's very possible that Tim Patrick is one of the starting three. Not hard for me to imagine it was a coach doing a player a solid. And if I'm giving Tim Patrick snaps, who's that going to take away from directly? Marvin Mims, because Reynolds is penciled in as your slot. Sutton's your X. If you're going to up Tim Patrick snaps to throw the guy a bone, that's going to detract from Mims snaps with the first team. So that would be my cope if I was trying to cope.
Yeah. There you go. Well, we're coping. And Zach, something I think some are coping about right now is everybody bagging on Bo Nix on the timeline. That's a national reporter. That's what feels like I am coping about right now. We came on here after the game and we were all very, very excited about Bo Nix. You can see it, our thumbnail on that video had a picture of Bo Nix with fire all around the frame. It was amazing, right? We came on here jacked up. Frankie and I did a halftime spaces. Frankie couldn't stop cussing for the entire thing just because he was that excited. Now that we've had a second to, let it resonate, how are you feeling about Bo Nix now? Are you substantially lower, a little lower? Are you just as high as you were? You watched the film. What do you think?
I'm a little lower. I think in the moment I was looking for people that haven't seen the discourse, I guess, to catch up, the big complaints that I've seen come out about Knicks that I think have some good point to them are, the offense was a lot of underneath stuff. There were a couple deep shots sprinkled in there, but only 7 of his 21 attempts went further than 10 yards downfield. So it was a pretty underneath passing game. His average depth of target, I won't do the average depth of target on completions because the drop muddies that and everything, but average depth of target was like in the 42nd percentile. So a little below average, nothing that concerning. That one really doesn't bother me all that much. Again, I think you'd like to maybe see a little more there, but I also think he was more than willing to rip some shot plays. I was the guy post-draft criticizing him, going like, man, one of the things that bugged me on his Oregon tape was I felt like he was way too willing to take the check down. That play where I think is his first passing attempt, right? He's taking the shot right in the pause. He's taking a hit and he launches a pass to Greg Dulcich downfield instead of, taking an easier answer. Like that is a gutsy throw to me. The wheel route, not a good throw, but I mean that decision, like if we're talking about like, oh, captain check down, whatever, right? Like that's not a captain check down move. The wheel route play where he clearly like buys time, he sees the wheel's not open, sees the chance at a big play, makes the like little footwork adjustment he needs to hit that. So there was enough there for me on that front. The other concern that I think is more fair is that he was way too willing to leave his feet. And I think going into it, that was something I wanted to see because one of the big questions surrounding Bo Nix, I feel, is like the playmaking ability, the ceiling there, which I know you're not necessarily a big believer in, but at least nationally, I'd say one of the biggest knocks on Nix is the idea that he's just a game manager and he doesn't have a high ceiling. So I really wanted to see, let's see some playmaking on the NFL level. Let's see something that dismisses that. And, him on his back foot, like fading away, hitting a nice out route. I think it was Valet. Like that was really promising to me. That was the stuff I wanted to see. Going back and revisiting the tape, you notice that he's getting off his platform way too frequently and in times when he really just doesn't need to. You hope that can be coached out of him. He did throw on the run a lot at Oregon. So it is something I worry a little bit about. Maybe that's habitual. But if we coach it out of him, something I'm going to be watching very closely this week to tie back to the episode in the joint practice in the game. If they can coach that out of him, I think it would be like in this week, or we just see that go down a bit. It'd be huge because it made it harder for him. He doesn't have the most special arm where he can get away with doing that. You saw the accuracy really dip when he did do that. That's the big thing I want to see him improve upon. Just a little more. Don't be so quick to leave your platform. Sorry, I know I went for a while, Joey.
No, you're good. And I think you guys hit it. Chase says, are you guys going to be there on Friday? Yes, we are. So make sure you guys are following Zach at Zach_Seegers. He does his big camp threads all the time. He's going to be paying attention to Bo Nix like nobody else. Everyone knows Zach has the best training camp coverage. So make sure you guys are there for that. One thing I do want to point out, I do feel like some of the narrative here with this, because like he did have these issues. That's absolutely true. And I'm going to get into that and expand on those issues here in a sec. I do feel like some people are just kind of, they're making the extent of how detrimental that was based off of their pre-scout notes on him. I feel like if that were Jane Daniels doing those exact same mistakes Bo Nix does, people would be like, okay, but there was some good stuff there. We just got to get that out of him. The narrative and the final conclusion would just be a little different than it was for Bo Nix on the national level. Bo Nix wasn't a national media darling by any means. Most people had him, hey, I wouldn't touch this guy with a 10-foot pole in the first round. So you're getting some of that still. That's a common thing in the scouting community. I do it. Everybody does it. We hold on to our scouting reports maybe a little too long. I did that with Justin Fields, right? We've all done that.
Getting chances.
Right, exactly. And it just happens. It happens. Now, the points they are making, though, I'm not going to include their conclusion. The points they're making are absolutely true. Bo was moving around the pocket way too frantically. Like, how many times? It was like twice, where it was he just needs to step up in the pocket. He starts dead sprinting up the pocket like dead, like I'm taking off on a 40 and throwing on the run right up the middle of the pocket. It was like, dude, you could have just taken one step, planted your feet, and threw. And both those times the ball came out inaccurate just because, hey, your feet aren't planted. He is really good at throwing on the run. That he made that obvious this last week. I think that's something we can look at and be like, that's a positive. We know Bo can play make, like you were saying, Zach. If he needs to throw on the run and make these passes, he can do that. And then the other part about it is, if I'm talking about how to manipulate a pocket, right, at least Bo is seeing where he needs to go in the pocket. That's not something I could say about Russell Wilson this last year, where Bo was dead sprinting up the pocket. Russ was sprinting out of the pocket on those exact same times when he should have stepped up. I thought he saw the pocket okay. I just thought he was way too frantic about it. That was something. And like when I say way too frantic, I mean way too frantic. Everything was a throw on the run. Very, very rarely was he planting his feet and making a throw.
Yeah, and also like we talk about, like, what are the biggest parts of making that leap from the college game to the pro game? And we so often talk about the speed of the game. I think it's fair that like a rookie in their very first game might look a little frantic, I didn't get, Paxton Lynch vibes where it was like, holy shit, the game is going way too fast for this guy. It was nothing like that. But to your point, yeah, it felt, I was talking with JP Acosta about it afterwards. He put out a tweet about, we were DMing back and forth. And I thought he put it well. Like if Bo Nix can just like play quarterback with a little less ADHD, or if like feel like he has a little less ADHD to him, he'll be fine. And I think there's a good deal of truth to that just like settling down. But the pressure creation point is huge, and it was so much better. He held the ball for 2.87 seconds this past week. If you go to
thank you for that correction on Twitter, by the way, Zach. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
I mean, I'm not going to take any shots at anybody, but that was a confusing one to me. But whatever. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. That would not be good for me. It's trying to give you.
I'm trying to get him to.
Who almost had me. Anyways, time to throw. He was really good. I think it was like 2.3 seconds. That's what it was, or so, something like that. On his time to throw. And you look at Russell Wilson last year, and he's the fourth worst time to throw in the league in terms of created pressures. He was at the top of the league. Bo Nix's pocket field I was curious. I wanted to check it. He did create 2 pressures, which wasn't great, but it still was nowhere near as bad as what Russell Wilson was creating when he was a quarterback.
Yeah, where Russ needed to like go faster, Bo needs to kind of slow down. That's kind of the issue. He's rushing through his reads as well. Not only is he frantic running up into the pocket, he's rushing through his reads. He's making the reads. He's just rushing through them and not actually seeing the whole play through. Which these are things that are very, I think, can be fixed. Like that's where I was saying earlier, where people are making this a detrimental. We are not there yet. Like This very much looked like to me, like we're talking about a guy in his first NFL action. That's what it looked like. It looked like a frantic quarterback, and the game was a little fast right there. That's what was happening. And he just needs to settle down. That's what it looked like. It didn't look like you said, Drew Lock or Paxton Lynch, where I'm sitting there looking at you, and I'm like, what the hell are you even thinking? No, I'm seeing what Bo is going through mentally, and it's just about slowing down. That's really the big issue.
Yeah, and yeah, I just think he needs to slow down. And to that point, like I would rather have a quarterback need to slow down than speed up. Like you look at Justin Fields, he's just never been able to speed up. Russell Wilson, another one that's just like never been able to speed up with the game. It's anecdotal, totally. I've never been a quarterback coach, but observing it, I feel like it's much harder to speed up and get that internal clock if you don't have it at all versus settling down a little, becoming a little more like calm and confident. I think that just goes for most things, which is probably why I can project it onto being a quarterback. You know, you normally become like more settled, as things go on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I still think this last preseason game was I was very happy with it. I still think that like some of the points we made are very much still true. Sean Payton looks like he's opening his offense more than what he could do with Russell Wilson, right? I still think so much more of the field is available with Bo Nix, even playing like he did last week, than it was with Russell Wilson. These things are still very much true. And I'm excited about it. I'm still very much excited. We still saw so much out of the rookies last week. I thought it looked good. Now, you don't want to get too excited the same way you don't want to get too worried. At the end of the day, it is a preseason game, and we're just going to get more information every week. Anybody calling something right now is kind of lying like to themselves. They're just calling stuff. They're guessing. It's not really an educated answer even at this point. Educated guess at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I'm trying to get these two of, oh goodness. I was trying to look up the stats on like how frequently Bo Nix is allowing pressure relative to Russell Wilson. And I can't. I'm falling behind here. Wait. Okay. He did it on 2 of 24 snaps, so 1 out of 12. Actually, no, it's about the same. Actually, it's a little worse. Oof. So actually, that's something for him to work on, being a little more aware of pressure. If we really want to see that leap from Russell Wilson, just looking at the numbers in terms of allowed quarterback pressure, I'm thinking. Again, I'm trying to do this in my head really quick. So Russ created pressure on 7.6% of his dropbacks, a pressure that he was deemed responsible for. Bo Nix in his preseason debut, again, he's the rookie playing his first ever game, we're understanding that, was at 8%. So
really,
yeah, I was surprised looking at that number. I'm surprised right now. So something for him to improve on to the points we've been making. But it definitely wasn't like a holding the ball long thing. He got rid of the ball pretty quick.
Well, we have a super chat in here. Roport gave us $10. Shout out to you, man. Thank you so much. He says, great analysis, fellas. Thank you for joining today. Seriously, thank you so much. We appreciate everybody in this chat so much. Like, seriously, this is something Zach and I just do for the hell of it. It's fun. We have a great time with it. Make sure you guys are following everything Let's Talk Broncos. Altitude Adjustment last night had Chris Harris Jr. on. That was one of the funnier episodes I feel like I ever saw. Mario was bagging on some Broncos that Pat played with, man. It was crazy. It was really, really crazy. But Zach, I know you have some stuff you want to shout out before we get out of here, and I want to give you the floor to do that.
Yeah, really quick. I just want to echo you on that episode. That was so sweet. Like, yes, there was the crazy bit, but even just like hearing stories about like, because Chris Harris Jr. was in that locker room when Paxton Lynch was going in there and looking so far over his skis. It was really
Paxton.
I know, but it was a player perspective I don't think I had ever heard in regard to like the Paxton Lynch and beyond that, like a lot of different players. So just Mario's Mario, and it was definitely and that's like the fun crazy bits, but also it was just far out. Anyways. Articles down in the description of this video on YouTube. Also can find them very easily at the top of letstalkbroncos.com. They're right there on top of the homepage. We've got 3 for you. The 2 links below are going to be my stock report, stock up, stock down, from this week's game. Went back, watched the film, updated my stock report, went really in depth on some things like Bo Nix, like the rookie class showing out. Check that out. Then we got an article from our own Carter Dillon. It was an amazing article. Shout out to Carter, looking at, or previewing rather, I guess, the players Broncos Country needs to have an eye on during this preseason run. Keep an eye on that. I thought that was definitely something to check out. And then just before this show, I dropped it. I'm going to tweet it out once we get out of here. We had our own Jacob Romano drop an article on the front seven and why he thinks it's going to be sneaky good. He sees a breakout season coming from these edge rushers, coming from this defensive line. He lays out why in that piece. That's the very top story on the website right now. You should check it out.
Yeah, make sure you guys are checking out letstalkbroncos.com. Articles going up all the time. Make sure you guys are liking this video. Show us support, please. We love you guys. And until next time, go Broncos.
Go Broncos.